Let's move into it. Let's break down Utah versus Florida. It's exciting. The energy is electric. There's been some shit talking going on. Dave's been sharing it on the Twitter sphere, the bird sphere. The guy is a Twitter just magician, I would like to say. And Utah's talking a little smack, talking about possibly injuring Anthony Richardson because there isn't a backup. It's just typical nonsense. Like it's the Saints organization. There's no bounties out for anybody. But it's fun. So Dave's got some great data, some great information. He's got his own podcast with David Waters that's coming out in a few days. So we're not going to give all the Easter eggs, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. But guys, make sure you go check out his podcast with Dave Waters, so where they really break down the snaps per guys and just tons of information. Just information overload, especially for data guy. You're going to absolutely love it. We talked a little bit about it on Twitter Space. Dave's old. If I know Dave at all, I see some of that kind of leaking over tonight because Dave loves his data. So let's be prepared. But we want to break down the rooms. We want to talk about kind of which team is winning what room, who's winning the quarterback room, who's winning the running back room, and let's go into that. Let's start on the O-line, Dave. I know that's where you kind of have the most data. Say what you feel comfortable with, and then we'll go from there, boss.
Yeah, when I compiled the numbers, looking at Utah's O-line compared to, I guess, Florida's offensive line, right? So I know they don't play against each other as offensive line and defensive line, but I'm just comparing both position groups here. Florida actually has the more experienced offensive line in career snaps. Florida actually has 6,826 total snaps between all the offensive linemen on their side of the football. Utah, they've got 4,901. So Florida usually they win that, I guess, the experience part of that spectrum. Looking at all the projected starters that they do have on Utah's offensive line, their left tackle, their left guard, actually have over 1,000 snaps between the both of them. The left tackle, he has 1,976 snaps. The left guard has 1,265 snaps. But once you get to the center, the right tackle, the right guard, center, 355 snaps. Right tackle, 847 snaps. Right tackle, or the right, 458 snaps. So none of the center, the right guard, or the right tackle have over 1,000 snaps. So if I'm Florida, if I'm trying to run the football, I'm trying to stack as many guys as I can on that right side of that offensive line, and I'm trying to run the ball down their throat on that right side, because you start doing that, they'll stack more linebackers and they'll stack more guys to that side. Then you run over to the left side, and then you expose that part.
Start wearing them down.
Yeah, a little misdirection. Yeah.
But you go back, you look at Florida's offensive line, they have, as I said, 6,826 snaps between them both. Two offensive linemen, Richard Garage and Osiris Torrance, have well over 2,000 snaps between each other. The center has 917. The left guard here has 831. The only inexperienced part of Florida's offensive line is all the way at right tackle. They only have 448 snaps. The projected starter does anyway. So I think Florida's pretty good on offensive line, especially with Osiris Torrance. Got to stay healthy. But if you heard Billy Napier's press conferences, he said that he's already had like 8 or 9 offensive linemen he's good with. He's looking for 10, 11, and 12. So you could take that for what you will. I think Florida actually has some pretty good depth on their offensive line when it comes to playing Utah. So even if a guy was to get hurt or go down, I think Florida can pretty much plug in somebody else and then be okay against Utah.
Yeah, so I think looking at Utah's schedule last year, I was kind of high on Utah coming into this, and then we broke down the Utah game on the Twitter space. They lost a lot of big games. They beat Oregon. They lost to Ohio State. I can't remember off the top of my head who else they lost it to, but when I looked at it, it wasn't as grand as I recalled from last year. And then I was thinking, I was like, look, Cincinnati had a great year last year, but we saw what happens to them when they had to play, in a sense, a real team, and they didn't really match up very well. And same thing with Utah. Now, Utah went toe-to-toe with Ohio State. Who did they lose in 3 overtimes with, Dave? Do you recall? Who was that they lost to, Utah?
I believe that was San Diego State.
San Diego State. Okay. So, again, that was 3 over.
Cameron Rising came in that very game, so they were struggling. I think they were down 21-3. Then Cameron Rising came in the game and almost brought them back, and they lost in overtime.
Okay, and it was in 3 overtimes. So, again, Utah is coming in heavily ranked. We all know that. We've talked about it. We've gone over that. The running back room, it seems good there. From what I can see, their depth chart doesn't seem doesn't seem as much as thick either. I know we get a lot of things about Florida with the depth not being there. It's more of a quality issue with Florida than a quantity, but it seems that Utah has a quantity issue as well. And we talked about the swamp and it being hot. That's going to play a factor. In Florida, I mean, they're kind of been known of just kind of wear and tearing guys down. It may be close in the first half, but I have a really strong feeling if it's close going into the second half, even if they're down by a touchdown, I see Florida running away with it in the second half. Just based on experience, that depth is going to start to play a factor with them. So if we had to give, right now, if we had to give a point to the O-line from a Florida, Utah, I think we're all in agreement on giving that to Florida, just sheer experience and depth. We in agreement there? Steve, are you okay with that?
So we're talking about, let's just say we're doing the offensive line for Florida versus the defensive line. We're talking about versus...
No, the O-line versus O-line. Who wins the room?
We're just doing position groups based between both.
Oh, okay. Groups. Okay. Yeah, then yes, I would 100% give it to Florida. Yeah, the offensive line versus offensive line, comparison to comparison, Florida.
We got $5 from Chris. He says San Diego State gashed Utah's O-line last year. Go watch the highlights. And see, that's what I think. Yeah. And then we had another one too, Steve. I think it's your favorite here. Let me see. Let me add it to the chat. FSU sucks. From FSU sucks. They're back, baby. I love these guys. This guy.
Miss you terribly.
So moving on, let's go to we'll go to the tight end room because I already have my answer for this. This is the one room that I felt that I overlooked that I am solely giving to Utah because they have two tight ends, which we were educated on in the top 10. Number 4 and the number 7th guy, both massive, just big dudes, 6'2", like 220. I want to say I can't think of their names right off the top of my head, but I'll pull it up here in just a minute. But I know he was 45 for 45. The guy didn't drop a ball last year, and the other guy was like 75. Let me pull the stats up. So I'm 100% giving it to them. Our tight end room. I mean, obviously we know that's the situation there. It's kind of been of a miss since Kyle Pitts has left. And look, having a big tight end room, we have known. I mean, you can tell just from past championships. I mean, look at Florida in 08. I mean, they had a solid tight end room. That is huge to a big success. Having two big, massive guys like that, one that can block, but two can dip off and catch that ball and allow for you to have that escape. It's that security blanket in a sense. That is going to be massive for Utah. I think they're going to definitely crutch on that. And another big part is who does Florida have to mimic those guys? There isn't much. So Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say between Florida's tight ends, guess how many snaps they have between all three of the.
Give me the juice, baby.
We love numbers.
33 total receptions between all those tight ends, and 32 of those is Keon Zipper.
Really?
Yeah, who's my boy? Look, I just want to point this out. In the summer, we were talking about some Florida players that I thought were going to have a breakout year, and Keon was one of my favorite guys. He's moved around some positions athletically and size-wise. I think he's a freak. But yeah, to your point, Soder, he doesn't have a ton of snap experience. I think he's got the physical ability to do a lot of things that some of the other great Florida tight ends have done. But he just hasn't done it yet. But yeah, to your point, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. That's a position right now that you got to wait and see. You just don't know yet.
So yeah, Brian, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, he's a very talented tight end. I mean, he was the top 100. I think he was the number 1 tight end in his class, top 100 guy. I believe it was the 2018 class from Lakeland there. I mean, he's got the potential. He's got the size. He's got decent speed for his size. I just don't know if he's going to be the starting tight end. Billy Napier, he talked about Dante Sanders being a godsend in one of his pressers. I know when, you line up tight ends and I've studied Billy Napier over at Louisiana Lafayette. He lined his tight ends up to block 66.7% of the time in his offense. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to do that as well, but we expect the tight ends to be more of a blocking mechanism right now, especially based on the experience. Maybe they get Keon Zipper, some guy out there for a pass. I like what some of these other tight ends can do as well, but I think right now what you're looking at is I think Florida's going to try to establish the run because obviously Billy Napier was a big run guy. And I think you're going to see a lot of those 2 tight end sets and them blocking and all this other kind of stuff. So right now, especially with the experience at tight end and you're playing a big-time matchup against Utah in the Swamp, I don't know if you take too much of a chance trying to pass to a tight end. out there, but you never know. I mean, Billy Napier, we saw it in the spring game that they did utilize the tight ends and some of the passing scenarios as well. So you don't really know what you're going to get out of these tight ends just based on the experience and how many receptions that they've had between all three of them. But it'll be an interesting surprise to see if Florida does wind up at the end of the game having the better tight end room.
Yeah, so that would be huge if we could end up like that. But going to Brian Kuth is one of the tight ends. He's the 4th ranked tight end going into this year. 6 foot 230. He just over 50% of his total snaps. He is a number 4. He's earned above 75 point or grade above 75 for the last 4 straight seasons, and he broke 15 tackles and averaged 6.1 yards a carry. And after the catch on 50 receptions, and then the 7th guy, Dalton Kincaid, is 6'4", 242. And he didn't drop, it was 45, did not drop 45 of his targets. So those are some big athletic boys that Florida's going to have a lot to deal with. So breaking that down, obviously a point to them for those guys. If I had to divvy out some points.
Yeah, you have to give the tight end room to Utah right now until we see what's going to happen.
Agreed.
Fair enough. I'll take them.
If we go to the quarterback room, this one's going to be interesting. I know that Anthony is favored. Obviously, he has higher, from what last I checked, could have changed, higher Heisman odds, right? That doesn't mean he's the better quarterback or the better option. It just simply means that the potential is much greater than what's at Utah at the moment. But from what we know, what we've seen, I have to give Utah the point here, only because of experience and from him leading that team, winning games with that team last year. Anthony has not. We got to be realistic. As much as I would want to give it to Florida, I don't think I can here.
Yeah, you have to give it to Utah here at quarterback just based on experience. And Cameron Rising, I mean, he's a good quarterback, man. He completed 63.8% of his passes. His touchdown to interception ratio is at like 25%, so that's pretty good. 2,403. Yeah, pretty good QBR. 2,493 passing yards, 7.8 yards per attempt. Did run statistics on him to maybe see if some of this could be fool's gold or not. The defenses that Cameron Rising has played against was the 14th ranked defense. He scored 31 points. Pretty good. 39th ranked defense scored 24. Then I didn't do the scoring on the lower ranked defenses because if you can't score against them, then, I mean, he did his job against them anyway. Okay, so they've played, he played the 20th ranked defense, scored 35. Played Ohio State, the 31st ranked defense, and scored 45. Everybody knows that overtime game. I think towards the end of the year, Cameron Rising got better as the year went on. Obviously, he wasn't the projected starter. He just started for Utah. But if you look at their statistics, they've averaged 36.5 points per game. Defenses, they've played 4 top 50 defenses, but the rest of the defenses they played don't even make the top 50. They've played the 98th ranked defense, 70th, 61st, 103rd, 102nd, 78th, 77th. So they really haven't played any really good defenses though either. But I'm not going to take that away from Cameron Rising because he has shown the ability to play a top defense and put up 30 to 40 points as well. So you got to take it for what you will. Their average defense that they've played was 64th. So I have to give it to Cameron Rising just based on that and from what I've seen. And, the thing about Anthony Richardson is we don't know what we're going to get, right? He was kind of thrown to the wolves in that Georgia game. And they didn't even give him really a playbook. Dan Mullen wanted to prove a point, and he made sure he was going to play against the number 1 defense and start the game just to make a point. Because everybody that I've talked to knows that's exactly what happened. But you see the intangibles that he has. I think Anthony Richardson beats Cameron Rising based on physical ability, the ability to run. He runs a 4.4, 240 pounds. I think he has the stronger arm. He has all the physical tools that can make him an elite quarterback in any kind of conference in the nation. And like I said, his physical ability is better than Cameron Rising. He just doesn't have any experience. So
sure,
there's a lot of question marks, but we've seen the flashes. Are we going to get those same flashes against Utah? But I guess, as I said, game time, we'll find out. But I have to give the edge to Cameron Rising.
Would you say Cameron's on the rise?
I mean, I would say so, just based on how he. You got me. Yeah.
Okay, Dave was ready. Dave was dialed in. He was ready to rock and roll.
Look, David, don't ever read a message in the chat from North Florida white trash. Trust me,
worse
it's
than
all
that.
a trap.
It's
all
worse
a trap.
than that. So see, I see. I know you're gonna be all in on giving Utah a point here. Are you in agreement, or are you gonna surprise me?
No. I mean, just look. I mean, just from what Soder said, like he's not an unathletic kid, right? He was measured in at like what 6'2", 220 pounds. I don't think he plays the game the same way that Richardson does, but Utah's offense has been built around what his strengths are. So in Richardson is still coming in, and I think we talked about this last week. He just hasn't had the game experience. So not taking anything away from Richardson,
Sure.
I think if you put both of them together athletically and say which one is the better athlete, I think Richardson's the better athlete. Right now, which one's the better quarterback? I think we have to give it to Reiser.
Look at us, just all green. It's a little kumbaya out here.
That's just a happy little family.
So let's move on to the running back room. I give this point to Florida off the rip. I know that it's under a new staff. I know the running back room is fresh with Montreal Johnson, obviously new to the program. Naquan Wright coming off an injury. Lorenzo Lingard, a fifth-year senior, followed by Etienne as the freshman. To me, though, I still give it to them. I know Utah has a great freshman running back. I can't think of the name right now at the very moment. And I know their junior... Say that again.
Tavion Thomas.
Thank you, David. David's got it dialed up there. I know the running backs room, and this could be a little biased here. I might lose this battle, but from what I know from Montreal, the kid's a stud. I know obviously he played in the Sun Belt last year, but won freshman of the year or for the Sun Belt. We know what Naquan can do, and I think Lorenzo's going to surprise people. So with that, I've got to give it to again. This might be more of a biased pick than the others, but I feel good about our running back room.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. I mean, you had the freshman Sun Belt Player of the Year last year. He transfers to Florida, right? You got Tavion Thomas, who broke the Utah single-season rushing record last year in 2021. So you got those two guys head-to-head against each other. And then really, I mean, you've got a running back room you kind of know with Naquan Wright because he's played a little bit. You don't really know a lot.
Sure.
But we've seen flashes. I mean, he's good at catching the ball in the backfield. He can make people miss at the second level. He's got really good vision. May not be the biggest back out there, but like when you put all those intangibles aside, he's a pretty good running back if you can get him a hole or something or something like that. So it's really hard only based on the fact that, Utah has a really good running back. I've seen the film on this kid. He's actually really, really good. He worries me for this game. I think Florida, we'll get into defensive line. I think Florida can stop him just based on the talent that they do have there at linebacker and defensive line. But I think he's going to get some yardage in this game. I'm not going to say he's going to run for 200 yards or anything like that, but he'll get yardage in this game. But I think Florida's going to get their fair share. It's hard for me, man. It's kind of a neck and neck, and I would pick Florida just based on the better offensive line, but I still think Utah could have an edge here too. But I'll give Florida a point.
Ooh.
Interesting. Okay, so look, Tavion Thomas, he is a transfer out of Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that one. I looked up his bio, and look, the kid is 238 pounds. Yeah, he's good. He's good. Now, the one thing I will say, right, he is a big boy, and that could be a situation where as the game wears down, if it's close and you're in the third quarter, late third quarter, fourth quarter, and you got a 238-pound running back that's still finding a crease and barreling downhill, that's very difficult for a defense to stop. They get really beat up. Now, if they've been stopping him all game, that kid's already gassed by halftime because they don't have depth. Utah does not have the depth that Florida has. And I know we're talking about, some of these guys like Montreal Johnson is a transfer, but he was a transfer that came from Billy's system. He knows it very well. Naquan Wright, again, limited sample size, but there's a lot of talent there. We all love Lorenzo, and I think that he could really exploit a defense if he can find some space to get loose, maybe in the flats or maybe even just running some underneath routes if a linebacker is too far back. So I like Florida's depth more than I like Utah's stud. I'm going to give Florida the point.
Wow. Okay. Steve threw me through for a ringer. I was ready for an L on that one. So right now it's 2-2. Let's go to the defense. Let's do the entire defense on this side. I think the hype that we've been giving defense, I know, David, you have some stats on the D line as well. I want to say from what if I recall from our Twitter space, they also have more experience from a snap perspective on the defensive side. It's a little bit closer than the offense, if I recall, but it is a little bit more.
Yeah, defensive line's a little bit more than theirs. Yeah.
Yeah, not by much, but it's still, again, there's more of a presence there. We're familiar with Fincher Miller, going to do some great things. Gervon Dexter. That team is older as well. The youngest, not the youngest, but one of the younger guys on that team on the defensive side for Florida is Gervon Dexter, and a sophomore. And we know what that kid's going to do and what we were expecting him to do. And again, that is the youngest outside of our DBs we got a few freshmen that have stepped up. That defensive side is one. Matured, as well as to me, in my opinion, is where I feel like our quality and quantity of depth is at its highest versus the entire team. And I think we can all agree that is as of now, the best part of Florida's team. And I think that by far, without a shadow of a doubt, earns them a point over Utah, which to me, I looked at Utah as well. The depth isn't there. It's very young on the defensive side. There's a lot there. Again, we talked about the inexperience, so that's why I give it to Florida.
Yeah, and it's not a homer pick. I'll give it to Florida too. If you're talking all like total defense, or if you're just going defensive line, I'm still going to give it to Florida. We all know.
I think it's just easier kind of just to clump it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Utah's offensive line, they're just, you've got two experienced guys there, as I said, on the left side, but as you go to the center and the right side of that offensive line, there's not a lot of experience there. There's not a lot of kids that are, you got an older kid, maybe a sophomore or something like that, but, as I said, Florida could probably expose the right side of that offensive line. And this is where I was coming in, and this is why I gave Florida the edge on the running backs and the running situation compared to Utah's, is because you got Ventrell Miller back there ready to take somebody's head off. He's been proven to be a good run gap stopper, a good inside linebacker right there. And I think that they're going to have trouble running the football if Ventrell Miller's out there. And he was hurt all last year. Like, we didn't have Ventrell Miller out there against a lot of the other teams. But I will say this, though. Utah last year was 11th in the nation in rushing. I think it was like 216 yards on average each game. Obviously, they weren't playing the greatest defenses in the world. I get that. But you still got to take that into the factor. Their running back rushed for 1,106 yards last year. But as I said, this is going to be a defensive line that they haven't had to face before. Something that they're going to have to prepare for. You got 90,000 fans screaming in Florida Stadium. And I know the humidity. I don't buy the humidity whole thing. Kids can play in different kinds of weather, but I think
you're not buying it.
When you get to the third and fourth quarter of that game, though, that could be a factor. Like I said, right now, on defensive line, they've got a little bit more experience here. Let me see. Let me look at these defensive line numbers here. So total career experience in snaps, Utah's at 1603, Florida's at 2887. So they've really, obviously. You've got Gervon Dexter, you've got Princely Human-Melan, who I think is a kid that's actually going to turn a lot of heads, man. I believe a lot in Princely Human-Melan. Jalen Lee, question mark there. You don't really know what you're going to get out of him. You got big Desmond Watson there behind him. You hear a lot about Tyreek Sapp in these practices. You heard Billy Napier talk about Tyreek Sapp's turning heads in practice, so you maybe he inserts him in there to take up for somebody. Obviously, you got Gervon Dexter. We all see what he can do. Brenton Cox is probably going to have a field day if he goes on that right side of that offensive line. But as I said, man, I would have to give the edge if you're going defense or defensive line. I would give Florida the edge defensive line.
Okay.
Steve?
So Soder, let me throw this back to you, and you might have moved on, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but you brought up the number of starts for the Florida offensive line, like the total number of starts for those guys. And I think when we talk about a defense versus an offense, talking about the number of starts that both defenses has doesn't really compare because neither of those two units are on the field at the same time. It's more of whose offense and whose defense is stronger because those are the ones that are going against each other. So do you still have the number of starts for the offensive line for Florida?
Yeah, it's 6,826 for the offensive line.
Okay, and then the defensive line for Utah. because it looks like their depth chart right now is left end sophomore, left tackle sophomore,
It's young. It was
right tackle
1,000.
sophomore. So you got
Very
1,000
experienced.
versus 1,600. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And I think that's where things start to change. It's not so much defense line versus defensive line and grading it.
It's how you match
offensive line versus defensive line, right? And I think that's what a huge factor in going into whether the humidity matters. That's a grind of a football game, especially for your first game of the year. They also have a stud linebacker for Utah that's a freshman. That's asking a lot for a kid who was looking at, opening presents under the tree last year. And then you've got, you've got a strong safety in a corner, as well as your nickel back for Utah are all sophomores. Not saying that they didn't get some time last year. That's not enough opportunity to get realistic time. So, the wide receiver room for Florida versus the offensive line experience versus the defensive or the defensive line for Utah. I think if you look at those experience levels, it translates very well for Florida. So if we're looking at a defense as a whole for Utah, I'm going to give Florida the point only because of the way that the offense matches up for Florida.
Steve is just dialed in sometimes, boys. Why pay the boy? I love it. I love it. We were rooming around for a bit, but we dialed it back in, and I love it.
Talking about here. That's why I'm on this thing.
This is why.
If that was the case, you would have found a Florida guy to begin with.
Yes, this is Steve when Steve gets in the numbers and he gets in between the lines. Okay, the guy gets down. I love it. This is why these two are here. David, Holly, they're locked in. I'm obviously here for the looks and for a good time.
Hey, you got the guns now. You got you're popping the muscles on the shoulder, the front shoulder.
So I gotta do something. I gotta bring something to the show. Really quick, we have Utah and Utes Football Digest. I don't know if it's like the brand or whatever, but here's their hot take. Tavion Thomas, Jalen Glover, Micah Bernard, combined for over 180 scrimmage yards before that game is over. Check mark.
What are you talking about? The running backs?
Yeah. That's what it looks like from the Utah Digest there. So we got some Utes in the chat. It seems like we're stirring up a little bit of juice here for the boys. So I love it.
Well, as I said, they do got a good running back by Tavion Thomas. I just don't see anything else being too threatening.
He's saying a combined 180 from the scrimmage at the end of the game for those three guys. That was his take.
180 rushing yards total?
That was what I'm looking at here.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe you
based on what we just said with their offensive line.
Good running back. Tavion Thomas is a good running back. I mean, he rushed for 1,106 yards last year. That's a lot of yards to be rushing for as I said, like a running back. But as I said, you go if you want to look at let's see, offensive line. I already did that, but you were talking about defensive line. Total career experience in snaps for their defensive line, and I'll actually go by player. I'm not going to name the names or anything. 118. 504, 261, 720. It's not a lot of total snaps between those defensive linemen.
Sure. So I think we're kind of moving on from Utah versus Florida here, but the point of this was to show, and there's been talk about it as well too, where the athleticism from Florida, again with top classes, we talked about that on the space, where Utah hasn't had a top 25 class, I believe, in the last 3 years, which speaks to the talent. Again, we all know that stars don't mean everything, but there is some validity to that, right? And I think Florida this class that's coming in now, this class that's taking over, was a top 10 class for Mullen. So these are some studs. I think where we fell short last year was all on the coaching aspect, not utilizing these players. I think the Utah is a bit overrated in a sense of it's that Cincinnati vibe of like scheduling had a little bit to do with it. When they were in the big games, they couldn't get it done. The talent, the inexperience is going to be there. The depth isn't there. I don't think it's going to be as a bloodbath. And I'm pretty sure it's a pick 'em. If not, I think it's like a 6-point favorite for Utah. It's been varying over the last few days. If you want to pull that up, Steve, and check that out. But I don't think it's as much as close as people are saying it. I think, again, I know Utah's ranked 7th. Could be talking to myself here. I might be regretting this in a few days, but I don't think it's close. It shouldn't be as close as what people were saying. I also put in a let me see here, a toll at the beginning of it. And I want to see what you guys have said thus far. We have almost 200 votes on the toll, 213 votes. Incredible. I said, does Florida score against Utah 20 to below, 21 to 29, or 30 plus? And the votes came out to be, it's pretty close actually, where 48% chose 21 to 29, 12% said 20 and below, 39% said 30 plus. I think that 21 to 29 is that healthy range. That was kind of my prediction. Could we tickle 30? Possibly. But I'm definitely feeling a 20-point score here for Florida.
Yeah, I think both teams actually score over 20 points on each other. I've got Florida winning that game 28-24. I think the
Seems to be the
is,
line.
I think the line is like at 2 right now.
Oh, really?
So, yeah,
It's
think
2.5. You're right.
Okay.
And that's Utah 2.5.
Basically a pick'em game.
Utah's favored by 2.5, which essentially is a pick'em considering it's
Home
at Florida.
We're gonna do some pick'ems next week. We've got some cool news on a partnership that we're working with, and we're gonna do some pick'ems next week and give you Steve and I will give you our picks and our breakdowns all for college football next week. So make sure you guys tune in for that. Real quick though, we have a super chat from man Kevin Stokes, Papa Stokes, $2 from the man. Thank you, thank you, Papa Stokes. Appreciate it, big dog. I think that was
we haven't touched the comments here in a while.
Yeah, they're cruising over there, boys. What's going on? Larry Pilgrim, welcome. 1J Finesse, Q Lee, what's up? Turkinator, welcome. What's up, fellas? Live chat's going solid. The live chat is going through the roof right now, boys. Eddie Siwa, what's going on, my man?
These guys run their own chat. We just do a show. Y'all
I don't even think they want us to talk to them, to be honest with you.
I don't think so, to be honest.
Why are you Utah fans so pumped? They went 10-4 last year. I mean, that's big for Utah. That's Walker Thompson. That's a big deal.
I have to mention when you were talking about like the talent differential. Yeah, Florida has way better talent. High school was. Utah's known for being like a development school.
Sure.
When you don't have the talent, though, to compete with other teams, you have to have the quarterback. And I think Utah's got the quarterback. I mean, I was kind of impressed with what Cameron Rising did against Ohio State, the 31st ranked defense in the nation. You go down some of the offensive stats. I mean, 429 point yards per game, 39th ranked in the nation. 35.8 points per game, ranked 13th in the nation. Rushing yards per game, 219.2. 11th in the nation, but Florida was also in the top 25. They rushed for over 200 yards on average last year too. Really good Alabama game that we should have won. But passing yards per game is something that jumped out to me, and it kind of surprised me a little bit when I thought about it. They're 85th in passing yards per game at 210.6. But in turn, if you're running the ball like that, 219.2 yards per average, you don't really have to pass the ball that much. So
sure,
my key to this game is if Florida can contain their run and play good defense, I think they win this game.
And that again,
to your point, real fast about the quarterback situation and how an average team or potentially a team, when you look at some of the Southern teams and some of the star rankings and things like that you have, especially with like an Ohio State, Alabama's, things like that. To your point, one good quarterback, one above average quarterback can lift a team. Let's look at Cincinnati last year being in the college playoffs. They got clowned against Alabama, but they were expected to. The fact that they got there came from really good quarterback play, efficient quarterback play. And it didn't matter that the guy wasn't a Heisman contender. It just meant that he operated so well within that system that he was able to take a team that had good talent and had good coaching, but elevate them to a level that I don't even think Cincinnati expected to be in, simply because of that one guy playing at a high level. So looking at Utah in that same scenario, if their quarterback has the same type of year that Cincinnati's quarterback did last year, it does get a little bit dicey, and it could be a little bit dicey in Gainesville, especially installing a new offense and defense game one.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, this is a new coaching staff. They're having to learn pretty much within, I guess, like the first fall camp, spring practices, and all of that. So, I mean, you do have the coaching experience. You give that to Utah because obviously they haven't had to go through the woes that Florida has there. But I mean, you got Billy Napier coming in here, very successful at Louisiana Lafayette, but obviously he didn't do too good his first year when he was there. But then, he only lost 4 games the next 3 years at Louisiana Lafayette. So
yeah, he was down.
It took him 1 season to kind of just turn that program around. This is the SEC's Florida. It may take him a little bit longer, But as I said, you got to give the coaching edge to Utah there. I mean, you just have to. If we're going to talk coaching and all that, just because of that. Now, that doesn't mean that Billy Napier's a worse or better coach than somebody else. It's just the fact that the coaching experience between the players, they're a lot more familiar with what their head coach wants to run than what Billy Napier wants to at this moment. But are we going to see all these false starts? Are we going to see the penalties that we saw last year? Are we going to see all the missed tackles that we saw last year? Big question, man, and that's why that kind of worries me a little bit against the rushing game if they get to the second level. Florida was pretty bad in missed tackles last year. I think over 130 missed tackles between the whole team, the whole season. So that's an average of 10 to 11 missed tackles per game. Not going to cut it, especially giving up yards after catch, after passes, and all that. But we obviously, like I said, we all know how the defense was after those first 6 games, where they held Alabama to 10 points the second half, ran the ball down their throat. If we get the Florida that we got at the beginning of the season, first 6 games, and we get that energy back, it's going to be a rough one for Utah. Now, if we get the Florida that was the last 7 games of the season, it's going to be a rough one for Florida.
Yep.